Welcome back to Obscure Star Wars EU, and today we are taking a look at one of the earliest pieces of expanded universe material in existence. I featured this story a very long time ago in a video dedicated solely to it, so I may be covering a bit of old ground, albeit with a deeper voice, better looking face, and more articulated thoughts. Hopefully. But I covered this video several years ago on my channel. I covered this piece when I had just gotten it in. And what is that piece? Well, it is Official Poster Monthly, issue 16, which featured a short story, one of the earliest short stories in the history of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, that had original material and an original story, and that story is called Cantina Communications. Some of you who have been watching the channel for a while might remember that the last time I covered this in a video, arguably, that video was the first Obscure Star Wars EU video I did on my channel before I even covered the High Name Minis. But, I don't know. I figured as being a completist and being someone who wants my series grouped together due to slight OCD, not diagnosable, but slight. I just want things to look, neat and easy to, comb through. And so I decided that we would take another look at it. And there might not be people aware of it, so I figured we would talk about it now today. First of all, I love the cover. It just screams old. It screams old. Old Official Poster Monthly. The logo is beautiful, purple with the blue trimmings. Absolutely love it. And the lines and the stickers and everything about it. So if you open it up, it opens in a somewhat interesting manner. So as you can see, it opens and it's just two. So it's like, is there just one page to this thing? Where is Cantina Communications? So what you have to do to be able to access this story is somewhat inconvenient. So it's kind of inconvenient to actually read this story because, well, it's a poster. So it unfolds again, and believe it or not, would then unfold again. And so it creates a huge poster of 3PO and R2. Just look at that. Isn't that wild? And then we're left with, I'm trying to be super careful to keep it in good condition, but to show you guys, but we're left with all the stories on these squares, and there's the cover on the top, of course. Very amusing. But I can fold it back down here, and it will be of a much more manageable to consume size and quality. So, on this page, you will see Cantina Communications, and this is a short story. This is the image, the title, and the image here in blue with the Devaronian is the image used on Wikipedia as the image for this short story. So, I've read it before. I might read it again real quickly, potentially, but just to give you an idea of what the story is about. It's by John Chesterman, and it says, "The universe had already revealed some bizarre forms of life, and more were discovered every year. Travelers returning from the remoter parts of the galaxy even spoke of giant clouds of gas drifting in outer space which had evolved intelligence of a sort based on internal force fields. As a rule, the bigger and more complex the brain, the higher the intelligence, but most of the super brains were too large to move around independently, and keep very much to themselves. Luke had seen pictures of some of them, like the giant algae beds in the Cygnus B system, and perhaps the strangest of all, the Thinking Planet, which covered the planet Solanus. This was a sea so rich in chemicals it could carry out billions of thought processes in its murky depths. Yet it refused to take part in galactic affairs and spent its time playing with itself, making and reforming elaborate crystal structures, and brooding on its own identity. But that, as Han Solo would say, is another world. Here on Tatooine, Luke was faced with a familiar range of biology. However strange their outward appearance, at least they walked and talked. Although the bar was noisy, Luke realized that not all the conversation was audible. At higher frequencies than he could hear, there was an ultrasonic cacophony of squeaks and whistles. Cletonians were talking to each other across the room by vibrations in the electric fields, generated from the leathery scales which covered their bodies. Telepaths bent their heads together in corners, trying to shut out the babble of brainwaves around them, and Olfaxes sniffed the air, conversing in what was probably the most sophisticated language of all, the language of smell. A human being has 5 million sensory cells responding to smell signals, and a dog, which is one of the best earthly olfaxes, funny it says earthly, has 150 million. But on some of the dark planets, a long way from the nearest star covered with dense clouds, olfaxes had evolved which had half their brain devoted to smell. Using 3 different types of nerves in the same way that humans have 3 different light receptors in their eyes, they could smell and color in 3D. With their eyes closed, they could tell you not only who was in the bar, but where they were standing. There was no way to hide from an Olfax, and Imperial stormtroopers seldom got the drop on them, because their sensitive noses detected them long before they were visible. So the story continues on, but that gives you a general idea of what the story is about. The story is basically Luke contemplating life and the many life forms that inhabited the galaxy, both from the ones he'd heard about and the ones that he was observing within the Mos Eisley Cantina. So it's a short story that really is a peek into Luke's thoughts and a peek into the wide range of aliens and how they are able to communicate, smell, and the differences that make them unique in the Star Wars galaxy. In my opinion, a very, very cool short story concept that... Oh, it goes this way, doesn't it? It's a puzzle trying to put this thing away, I tell you. There we go. And final fold. And it once more looks like a magazine rather than a poster. But I do think this is a really quite interesting story in that it expands the Star Wars universe in a time when nothing else really had. They could have just written about a bunch of species, put it in a list, but instead they put it in prose, which I think is really neat of them to do and really neat to ponder and give depth to these things. Now we know that in Star Wars there's a thinking ocean called Selanus, which we wouldn't have known otherwise. So I think it's cool that John Chester was really thinking kind of outside the box about what he wanted to tell within Star Wars. Star Wars is a sandbox for lots of storytellers to have lots of ideas presented in it. And John Chester proves that that was the case very early on, as he left his own imprint on Star Wars and left his own creative ideas in a very early time for Star Wars when very few other things had come out to expand the world. He just makes it feel richer and more lived in with all of these facts and information and science-related stuff about it. And I think that's really, really cool. So Star Wars Official Poster Monthly, issue 16, gets 2 thumbs up from me. And I really like Cantina Communications. It's a really neat short story. And I'd say pick it up in its original form if you can. If you can track this down in the original poster, I think it's cool to have because of just how unique it is. Again, a product of a bygone era, back when there wasn't the internet. So, you know, the only way to get a rad poster like this in your room and relive the movie before the VHS had come out, unless you were going back to see it in the theaters multiple times, this was the only way to get to relive the movie with these stills. And so it's really, really cool, and the fact that there is a short story in here of all places just makes it so notable and unique that I think it's very worthy of getting and tracking down. It's definitely one of my favorite pieces, which I say almost every Obscure Star Wars EU video, of my collection. I just think it's so, so unique and so, so cool, and just demonstrates the core values of the expanded universe. What does it mean to be expanded material? And it goes all the way back to 1979 with this. It goes back to the beginning with this. The nature of the EU started here and lasted for decades to come. People playing in George's world and putting their own thoughts into it. And so I think it really encapsulates the heart of the expanded universe early on, and that's what makes it really special. So that's my thoughts on Official Poster Monthly issue 16, Cantina Communications. I really love this one. That'll do it for today's Obscure EU. Next time, I'll again be talking about something you've seen before on the channel, but in a little more detail. And it has to do with this man right here, Vader.